of now the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, that we penetrate the cabinets.
I also want to reiterate how deeply sorry Canada is for the situation this put President Zelensky and the Ukrainian delegation in. It is extremely troubling to think that this egregious error is being politicized by Russia and its supporters to provide false propaganda about what Ukraine is fighting for.
Why does this government treat Alberta like a fart in the room that nobody wants to talk about or acknowledge?
I heard her say a word that I know is distinctly unparliamentary, and I think she may want to withdraw it. The word was F-A-R-T.
I mean, we love your Mr. Trudeau. I mean, his family has always been such big fans about that.
Hey everybody, how's everyone doing today? Happy Monday. Just as a reminder, you don't hate Mondays, you hate capitalism. I'm of course your host Snow Himbo, and this is of course the Maple Files. This week I will be flying solo. We got a lot to talk about, and Yeti is still on his great adventure. Basically doing Yeti things, so I'll try and get everybody an update ASAP, as the kids say. But thanks everybody for tuning in. Oh boy, we got a lot to cover. So first and foremost, let's get it out of the way. Happy 1-year anniversary of Israel's ongoing genocide of the Palestinian people. No, we're not doing the whole let's remember when the IDF gunned down a bunch of its own people in order to manufacture consent for this whole fucking thing. Now, if you're like me and you're Canadian or even American, today on social media is probably insufferable. You're probably looking at a wave of the most unhinged, selective propaganda we've ever seen. The amount of people, I mean, we have conservatives who are mad at the NDP statement about today, which I felt didn't even go remotely hard enough. They kind of both sides it. They were like, yeah, October 7th was horrible. Hamas did. I condemn Hamas, all the shit there. But, they also pivoted into saying, yeah, but, what's happening to Palestine is horrifying and we need it to stop. It was a very normie take, at least a take that should be more normal and even-handed. But of course, you have conservatives who are melting the fuck down over it. This one dweeb I just responded to was like, you should have stopped reading at the third paragraph. And I'm like, okay, so to the conservatory brain, we need to just ignore children being blown up because it goes against our select group of check marks that we need to have a personality, a political personality, which is essentially the conservatory brain in Canada and largely in the States as well. Hey, CBC voter. Hey, everybody. Max, can you explain this fart thing? I can't explain the fart thing. So that was in the House of Commons. And using unparliamentary language, just kind of a goofy boomer thing, is highly frowned upon. And she literally, the leader of the Greens there was literally just objecting to like the use of the word fart. That's it. It's just like, we need to think of decorum, which is Canada in a nutshell. It's all the decorum. Once that veil falls, then people start to realize, hey, these guys are just as bad as America. They just don't have endless military. But yeah, that's it. It's virtue signaling over decorum. It's like, hey, we shouldn't say the word fart when we're doing grown-up politic things. That's it. There's nothing beyond that, really. It's kind of goofy as shit, if you ask me. Anyway, I'm gonna get right into the news, because when I'm solo, I will just rant about shit, and nobody wants to hear that crap. So let's hop right in. So the first story of the day, you might have seen this one. This happened on well, everybody started taking notice October 3rd, so Thursday last week, about that. BC NDP called a communist on sign outside of Lululemon founder Chip Wilson's mansion. A sign has gone up in front of the most expensive home in BC, the waterfront mansion owned by Lululemon founder Chip Wilson, calling the provincial NDP communist. Which, right off the bat, the most just process that sentence for a minute. A sign has gone up in the most expensive home in BC. The waterfront mansion owned by Lululemon founder Chip Wilson, calling the provincial NDP communist. I'm sorry, that's like the dumbest. Oh, man. That's like late-stage capitalism in a nutshell. And for the record, in case you're
down and protein up.
No, none of that. And in case you're not aware, the NDP is very far from communist. In fact, they've moved closer to the center. A strategy which I will never understand political parties doing, because if you're trying to cater to the center or to the right, and you're not one of the two major parties, like, you're not going to get any voters. People are just going to vote for the established center or right parties. Furthermore, I don't even understand why, like, the Democrats in the States or the liberals cater to the right. Because people are just going to vote for the right. That's it. They're not going to be like, oh, you've tricked me into voting for you with those reactionary policies. No, it's dog shit. Anyway, EB will tell you the Conservatives are far right, but neglects saying that the NDP is communist, the sign says. The new Democrat government brought increased taxes on homes assessed at over $3 million in 2018, and also increased income tax on the top 2% of earners. Moves Ebby defended when asked about the sign Thursday. When you were so rich that the Red Hot Chili Peppers play your birthday party, it's possible to lose perspective. Based. I would just say to Mr. Wilson, people are struggling out there and we need to provide support to them. I respect the work he's done in creating companies. I don't, because the work he's done in creating companies has essentially just exploited the working class. I don't respect the work he's done. I respect the work that his workers have done, and I think he should respect it as well. Because that's the only reason why he's got a $80 million fucking mansion. And he goes on, I think that's great, but I don't regret raising the taxes on his $80 million mansion. And this is kind of the game, right? It's like any kind of progressive policies whatsoever. These rich fuckers have to call communist or far left or out of control because they just go against their interests. And to become as wealthy as this clown is, you know, chances are you probably have a narcissistic streak. There comes a point when you amass this much wealth where you have to pick a road, and it's morality or riches. And know, I would agree. People like this, it's very easy to lose perspective because they change classes. Suddenly they are the bourgeoisie, they are not the proletariat. And so their perspective will change to something more aligned with their class interests, which is why he's mad about the NDP and trying to create trying to at least pretend to create a kind of system that is somewhat not unbelievably equal. I'm using careful language here because it is the fucking NDP. To a lot of people, that's far left. To me, that's like center right. It's just, gun to my head, who do I vote for between the Conservatives, the Liberals, or the NDP? Obviously, the NDP. Obvious, no shit. But that's my vote for either three parties is begrudgingly at best. Plus, I'm likely not going to vote. So, whether Wilson put the sign himself up has not been determined. The sign was put up as voters prepare to cast their ballots in the October 19th provincial election. CTV News has contacted a representative for Wilson, and this story will be updated if a response is received. So that's a sign right there. Yeah, fucking... Which is hilarious because the Conservatives are objectively far right. Here's the thing. The Conservative Party is absolutely far right if you don't play into this Overton window management sort of game. Which is, they have to paint one side as communist for suggesting anything other than just brutal capitalism and pull up your bootstraps. And then anything to the right of that is various shades of liberal. This is how conservatives play their game, right? That's because they're trying to paint their party as just normal, or common sense, as Milhouse fucking calls it. And they can't play that game unless they paint the opposition, which the closest to which in this circumstance would probably be NDP. And in a lot of polling as well, the NDP are now their competition. A lot of polling, NDP is polling higher than the Liberals. We'll get more into that later. But you might be asking yourself, who is this Chip Wilson fellow? Well, I'll fucking show you. He's an interesting cat. There we go. He is a very, very interesting... Which one of these buttons does the thing? How's that look? Right-wing group funded by Lululemon founder helped promote film demonizing Vancouver's homeless. A group funded by Lululemon founder Chip Wilson sponsored an event that brought together Vancouver's police union and right-wing political activists. Now, this story's from a couple of years ago, but I thought it was just perfect in kind of illustrating, oh, I'm seeing all these stories about this crazy psychotic sign that some rich guy put up. Maybe I need a little TLDR here. From a few years back, Vancouver's police union president, city council candidates, and far-right political activists came together at a film screening event last week that was sponsored by an organization funded by the founder of Lululemon, the Pacific Prosperity Network, a right-wing political organization funded by the founder, that's former CEO Chip Wilson, was listed as the main sponsor for the premiere of a documentary called Vancouver is Dying, which is so fantastically reactionary. At Simon Fraser University's Vancouver campus. Oh, God. Why does every conservative have to be shaped like a thumb? It's like they make these people in a lab. Oh, NDP's communist. Like, I don't get it. Anyway, the documentary was created by Aaron Gunn, the former BC Proud spokesperson and BC Liberal leadership candidate who was kicked out of the leadership race and disavowed by the party for comments on issues of reconciliation, diversity, and acceptance. The film repeatedly portrays Vancouver's downtown east side as beset by skyrocketing crime and violent attacks, and repeatedly characterizes the city's homeless population as violent. It ultimately blames harm reduction programs such as Vancouver Mayor Kennedy Stewart for not increasing the city's police budget. So, this is the conservative brain in full swing. Homeless people, a problem. Instead of dealing with the actual homeless problem, their solution is we need more boots on the ground to, like, I don't know, drop kick these people out of cities or whatever. But let's not deal with the fact that the people are actually homeless to begin with, which would completely solve the problem altogether. Let's use it as an excuse to increase the police budget. Joining Gunn at the screening was Ralph Kaisers, head of the Vancouver Police Union. Imagine that. One day earlier, the VPU controversially broke with tradition and endorsed far-right mayoral candidate Ken Sim for mayor. Kaisers, who is also a donor to Ken Sim and appears in the documentary, spoke on a panel following the premiere. Photos showed he was seated next to a controversial right-wing political activist named Angelo Isidoro. Isidoro, who moderated the event and is listed as the executive producer of the documentary, previously worked for the company behind the right-wing page Canada Proud and was also a member of UBC's Free Speech Club. Yeah, free speech until you say a word about Gaza. Isidoro was also a board member for the right-wing NPA municipal party, but resigned in 2021 after the Thai published a photo of him wearing a Make America Great Again. Oh my God. And flashing a sign, hand sign associated with hate groups at a pro-Trump rally in Vancouver. Like, I'm sorry. Do these people even realize they're fucking Canadian? That is like, on the list of cringe things a Canadian can do, wearing a MAGA hat is like top cringe. That's like saying, I don't even have a dog in this fight, but I just wish I was American. I want to LARP as an American. I want to LARP as someone who fights against the very healthcare they can't afford but desperately need. That's what you're saying. I want to LARP as a group of people who have a worse education system than we do. Not their fault. It's by design. Just unbelievably unserious behavior. Oh my God, look at this. Look at this dork. Photo show NPA director Angelo Isidoro. That guy's on 4chan for sure. I don't know many things for a fact, but that dude is definitely on 4chan. Look at this fucking dork. Oh my God, he looks... Oh, that's so goofy. Isidoro has also done work with the Pacific Prosperity Network. The network did not respond to requests for comments from Press Progress about their role in sponsoring the event or supporting the film. Sean Orr, a Vancouver City Council candidate with the Vote Socialist Municipal Party, live streamed from the event and posted photos showing the Pacific Prosperity Network's banner on display outside the theater. Wilson, The richest Wilson, the richest man in Vancouver, is sponsoring a documentary called Vancouver is Dying, or told Press Progress. We just wanted to get in there and just show that that we're not going to be intimidated. We're not going to let them control the narrative that Vancouver is dying. So this is Vote Socialist. Look who's funding Aaron Gunn's Vancouver is Dying film, showing tonight at SFU. This is billionaire Chip Wilson's new right-wing AstroTurf network. Sean Orr is live on IG calling on Ken SimCity to denounce his donor and backer for sponsorship this. Get out of here. In July, Chip Wilson wrote a letter to a number of wealthy acquaintances in Vancouver requesting donations of up to $200,000 to BBN. Sounds like socialism to me. In the letter, which was first reported by the Vancouver Sun, Wilson states that he had already made a donation of $380,000 to build software to run a successful campaign, gather big data, empower grassroots, and be an effective full-time voice for the right. This is an excerpt from Chip Wilson's letter. Because of the social media tax on anything libertarian, no one who makes over $100K a year enters politics. Oh my fucking God. You poor baby. He's afraid of social media attacks for being libertarian. Try being a Marxist, buddy. You'll get fucking pilloried. For a person who does not have the innate desire to work hard to get ahead, their best option is to run for politics for a politician's salary. If a dreamer, entrepreneur, or hard worker lost a political campaign, they have nothing to fall back on. To leave their business to make less money as a politician and take social media abuse makes no sense. I determined the right-leaning taxpayer has little chance of being heard from again. Yeah, it's such a bad thing that these rich people get shit on for their dumb reactionary takes. This is the most out of touch paragraph I've read in a really long fucking time. Like a really long time. This might be the most out of touch thing I've read in a long time. And to be fair, this completely gives the game away. Because it shows you what these people's actual priorities are at. If you want to run for office, you should be doing so because you want to make a difference. You should be running for office because you want to make your country better. You should not be running for office because there's a fucking financial incentive for you to do so. Okay, that's not the reason you run for office. The fact that he's like, well, if I make less money and actually have my ego wounded, then there's no point of doing it. Well, yeah, if you have such capitalist brain, if you are so pig brained, pork brain, we're gonna use that. From now on, we're using pork brain to describe anyone who has like a capitalist lens to everything they do. If you are so fucking pork brained that like you're deterred from running for office because you're not gonna make more money or equivalent money and take abuse on social media, which, by the way, for the guy who's concerned so much about abuse, he's got a sign in front of his fucking house calling a whole party communist. Another example of conservatives, they can dish it out, but the second the stone comes back on them, there's a lot of fucking shattering. That's all I'm saying. What's up, Witchy? What's up, Sequoto? What's up, Orca? Love you too. Hey everybody, come on in. Pull up a seat. Snow's on his own today, which means he's going to be ranting, probably yelling at some point. Others in attendance at the film premiere included NPA candidate Arizo Zarabian, former Vancouver Police Department analyst, was featured in the documentary as well, and Progress Vancouver candidate Mauro Francis. The Pacific Prosperity Network, which is formally registered as a nonprofit society in BC, does not have charitable status and is not currently registered as a third-party group. Earlier this month, the Pacific Prosperity Network was slapped with $1,000 fines in connection to its failure to register prior to sponsoring election advertising. So, that's kind of Chip Wilson's deal. That was better than I expected, actually. That whole paragraph of him being like, well, if I'm not making more money and people are actually like disagreeing with me, I don't want to do it. It's so fucking goofy. But anyway. Seriously disappointed in INN censorship. Me too, man. They definitely we're definitely flying a little too close to the sun. But that's why we did make our own Maple Files channel. Please subscribe to us if you haven't. And that's why we stream on other great platforms like Kick, like Rumble. You know, it's I have a prediction. My prediction is essentially that I think YouTube is going to get to the point where it's pretty much exactly like the corporate press. Like, it's just going to be CNN. And the reason for that is they're going to censor people and punish them so much that the only content you'll see on there is completely self-censored content. So you'll only see, like, the most lukewarm political takes. You'll only see, like, you know, billionaire approved, Israel approved, you know, Westoy brain approved sort of narratives, because they'll eventually just censor everything away. And I think this is going to backfire, because I think we're at a point in society where enough has gone on that people are starting to wake up at a rapid rate, and the propaganda is not working anymore. So people are going to look for better fucking platforms. They're going to look for platforms that offer like an actual real perspective. You know? Nobody wants to tune into someone who's self-censoring. It's not fun. Even if what they're saying is malarkey. Even if what they're saying is ridiculous. It's insane. Makes no sense. It's objectively false. It's still more interesting than someone who's just like, hey, welcome to my YouTube show. I'm just going to go and like regurgitate everything you fucking heard on CNN today. Nobody wants to stay for that, because they can just go to CNN for it. Or like Breaking Points or Daily Wire or whatever shit rag is regurgitating out the brain slop of your preferred political faction. So, that being said, we're going to go to the main story, because and I'll make a disclaimer by saying, just speaking a little bit further to that, I personally think, like my esteemed colleague Indy said, I think this is going to be a bit of a game of whack-a-mole. I think we're all going to end up migrating to a freer platform. Might be Rumble, might be Kick. I don't know which of those are going to pay out in the long term, but you know, eventually that platform might get taken over. and that platform starts clamping down and doing all sorts of bonkers shit. So we got to move again. And I think the idea of a digital nomad needs to be more of a possibility people need to consider as a mindset for being a content creator moving forward. It's entirely possible that we just won't have a forever platform where we can just, talk about shit like conspiracies and, push back against empire propaganda. We might have to always be kind of on the road, so to speak. And I'm fine with that. I'm up for the journey. Shit, eventually we might have to make our own platform altogether. Something that's completely not compromised by the moneyed. Anyway, let's hop into this juicy story here. My ugly ass is taking a backseat for this. So, something big happened in Toronto this weekend. Thousands of pro-Palestinian demonstrators hit the streets of Toronto. I like bigger text. Thousands of people took to the streets of Toronto on Saturday to protest the ongoing war in the Middle East. Okay, well, right off the bat, they're protesting the ongoing genocide in Gaza. But again, this is city news, right? We're not going to get too spicy on city news. They're going to be as impartial as they possibly can be. According to the Toronto Police Service, demonstrators began marching eastbound on College Street from University Avenue and made their way to Yonge Dundas Square just after 2 p.m. Used to live there. Officers warned residents to expect major traffic delays and to consider alternative routes of travel. You can see the tweet there. Entire neighborhoods have been destroyed. Entire families have been wiped out of the Gaza civil registry because of Israel's ongoing genocide and mass slaughter of innocent civilians, says Farah Mantar, a spokesperson for the group Toronto for Palestine. As a Palestinian from Gaza who cannot go back and see what her grandfather's built in Gaza, for her, I'm just outraged. I'm embarrassed by Canada's response, she added. So am I. And we'll get to this later, but I've been nothing but embarrassed all day, seeing the filth from not only conservatives, not only liberals, but even some members of the NDP. All this filth from this pseudo false flag that is October 7th. All these people clutching their pearls and pretending that the worst part of all this isn't the catastrophic death toll in Palestine, but the events of a single day, which, let me remind you, was an effect, not a cause. There's a cause and an effect. Shit like October 7th is an effect. Don't let anybody ever convince you or try to convince you that this started on October 7th, because it didn't. And I'll give you a great pushback for conservatives who try and frame it like that. Because a lot of conservatives are perfectly fine admitting that the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine didn't start when the Russian invasion happened, that there are things that happened beforehand. Hello, 2014. Throw that directly back in their face and say, okay, well, is it possible that this also did not happen in a vacuum? Is it possible that bad guys didn't just go, ha ha ha, we hate Jews, we're going to kill them, and that's all of the context we need for this? Anyway, Protesters who gathered at Young Dundas Square are demanding the federal government sever international ties with Israel. That'd be the least they could do. The rally was organized in part by several organizations, including the Palestinian Youth Movement. Demonstrators at King's College Circle at the University of Toronto campus for their own rally in support for the support of Palestinian people. Just months ago, the area became the site of a student encampment that lasted for nearly 2 months. Saturday's gathering eventually turned into a march, with demonstrators waving signs and chanting along the downtown core. That's a beautiful picture. Don't ever go to that McDonald's, though. The last time I went to that fucking McDonald's, okay, I got a McChicken and the middle of the McChicken was frozen. I'm not kidding. I had to take it back. They made me another one. It was overcooked. I just said fuck it and left. Don't ever go to that McDonald's. Anyway. The demonstrations come ahead of the 1-year anniversary of the October 7th Hamas-led attack on Israel that resulted in the death of approximately 1,200 people and 250 others taken hostage. Thanks in large part to the Israeli Defense Force, who, because of their own psychotic policies and protocols, are perfectly fine just killing their own. Hamas is a Palestinian militant group which has governed over Gaza since 2007 and has been listed as a terrorist entity by the government of Canada for over 2 decades. In the immediate aftermath of the attack, Israel declared war on Hamas and responded with a barrage of rocket fire that has caused mass death and destruction in Gaza. Since the start of the war, more than 42,000 Palestinians have been killed. That number is greatly under-exaggerated. Like the actual death toll is much, much higher. And an estimated 92,000 have been injured, according to health officials in the occupied territories. The United Nations estimates that more than half of the dead are women and children. Over the last year, tensions have grown into a region-wide conflict between Israel, Lebanon, and Iran. Israel and the militant group Hezbollah have traded fire across the Lebanon border almost daily since the day after Hamas's cross-border attack. Last month, pagers used by hundreds of Hezbollah members exploded almost simultaneously in parts of Lebanon as well as Syria. The attack killed at least 12 people, including 2 young children, and wounded thousands more. The operation is widely believed to have been carried out by Israel. Just say Israel did it. Come on. Like who else is going to do that? What, China? Russia? The call's coming from inside the house. Then on September 28th, an Israeli airstrike killed Hassan Nasrallah, Hezbollah's longtime leader and one of the Iranian-backed group's founding members. Iran retaliated in defense of their allies by sending 180 missiles into Israel that left residents scrambling for shelter, which we all know because they haven't shut the fuck up about it since it happened. It turns out people who are just fine with genociding a whole group of people sure are real big victims when they get some smoke back. Nearly 2,000 people have been killed in Lebanon in the latest conflict, most of them since September 23rd, according to the Lebanese Health Ministry. As the first anniversary of the October 7th Hamas-led attack on Israel approaches, authorities in the Greater Toronto area are preparing for potential protests and acts of violence. Well, our own police have committed acts of violence against the protesters, so I'm not sure how well they're preparing. Toronto Police Service Chief Myron Demkew announced last week that there will be an increased presence of undercover and uniformed officers throughout the city in the coming days. Marked police vehicles will also be patrolling some communities with static red and blue lights to enhance visibility. In addition, 3 mobile command posts will be stationed in Jewish neighborhoods, one at Bathurst and Glencairn, another at Bathurst and Shepherd, and a third at Bathurst and Finch. Additionally, a 4th mobile command post will be deployed to various mosques across the city. Police in Durham and York region announced a similar move on Wednesday, saying they'll be deploying more officers and command posts near faith-based institutions, schools, and community centers. And as it shows, that was over 30,000 people marching in Toronto. Toronto. From the accounts PYM Toronto and Palestinian Youth Movement. Toronto. Over 30K take the streets in Toronto to protest the ongoing genocide in Gaza that has been now raging on for nearly 1 year. In our thousands, in our millions, the masses of the world stand with Palestine, stand with justice, and stand with freedom. Together, we show the world that when we march together, we demonstrate our power and our determination to see a future where Palestine is liberated from the murderous Zionist occupation. Long live Gaza, long live Palestine. And let me tell you, Canada's resident reactionaries are having very, very big feelings over this. They are very mad, as I'm going to demonstrate. See some of the social media shitting and farting, as it will. This is Alan Fryer. There we go. So Ukrainian and Israel flag. So basically, I cannot lick enough boots. They want the world to know that Toronto is no longer safe for Jews. Me. Like, look at that. And you've got a bunch of propagandized people. How long will it take to deport this group? Like, they sound like Americans. I don't see any Canadian flags. Well, no shit. Nobody's protesting a genocide in Canada, you fucking idiot. Anyway, we got tons of these. People are just losing their fucking minds. Well, Toronto, we are famous again. Not for the mafia premier brother of the crack-smoking mayor who just raised a public park in the cover of night, but for hosting hateful parades that are more violent than the KKK protests of the Deep South. Fuck me. And, of course, Brianna Wu, who is a professional bad take haver, saying free Palestine, openly calling for violence and terrorism. This is a outstanding take. The KKK regularly came to my college, Ole Miss, to protest, and we let them. It's a free speech issue, but they never openly called for violence like free Palestine. So they're essentially, Brianna here is essentially trying to explain to you that protesting a genocide is actually worse than the KKK. That's a bit of a false equivalency, but that's the intent of what she's saying. Because she's introducing one group and another group and using a comparison as to what one group is doing and what the other group did not do. So, it's I will give Brianna credit. She is very good at linguistic games and manipulating dialogue. She's a very manipulative person. She's good. She's essentially very good at bullshit. So, and next, let's call it the Wheel of Chud Tears. It's from John Fraser. Anyone who thinks these protests are about a ceasefire in Gaza is sadly mistaken. Well, no, actually, they're about a ceasefire in Gaza, and that's just it. And this is what Zionists have to do. Okay? The protest is just about a ceasefire. That's it. That's all it's fucking about. That's all it was ever about. That's it. But they have to pile heaps of narrative. Look at all this narrative. They have to pile heaps of narrative on top of it, because if you just use your eyeballs and your ears and you just observe what's going on without any kind of spin or narrative, you will immediately be horrified. You will immediately be like, this needs to stop. This is atrocious. I can't be a part of this. This is fucking nuts. But once you introduce this narrative, once you start inserting all of this spin, that's how it becomes something that's at least slightly palatable to gullible or fearful reactionary people. They're organized and funded by the IRGC globally to spread unrest across the Western world. Yeah, they're just spreading unrest. To what end? What is the point of this unrest? Like, what are they trying to accomplish? Just make people feel uncomfortable? Like, what are you doing, man? They have normalized anti-Semitism and the glorification of terrorist organizations like Hamas and Hezbollah. The Liberal Party government, provincial and municipal governments, and university leaders have let this movement fester and grow for a year now. It has to be stopped. It's long past time to crack down and put an end to this madness. It's time to take back Canada. Man, and this is how they get you. This is how propaganda gets people. They are pretending that the Liberal Party is on the side of Hamas and Gaza and the bad guy, the terrorists. We're back in 2003. You're either with us or you're with the terrorists. The propaganda has not evolved one fucking iota. But this is how they get you. Because by painting them as, like, objectively on the opposite side, they're painting the milquetoast, lukewarm, objective support of Israel from the Liberal Party of Canada as not enough. They're presenting it as this is as far in support of that direction you can go. It's another example of Overton window management. And it's the exact same thing with Zion Dawn and the chuds over south of here, where they're saying Kamala Harris is like too supportive of Hamas. Kamala Harris hates Israel, which is ridiculous. Her administration is literally giving them insane amounts of money to slaughter innocent people right now. That's just reality. That's what's happening. But because that side is even more extreme with the issue, they get to pretend that they're the true ally to Israel, which again is just it's psychotic, is what it is. It's from Mark Towley. His name isn't Towley, but it is now. He's Towley. Mark Towley. It's hard to be proud of Canada tonight. It's unbelievably depressing to see such hatred and evil on our streets. To know it is visceral, deep-seated, and spewing not just from lunatics, but from regular Canadians, neighbors, family, rich, poor, those who should be leaders. It's hard to believe in Canada. I guess this is like a boomer thing. He's like starting his sentences off with caps lock. when there is no one to lead us away from hatred, to inspire people to be better than they truly are, to take action against this malevolent force that by diabolical design twists our innocent freedoms against us to destroy our freedom. So again, they have to paint opposition to an objectively bad thing. They have to paint the opposition as the hatred. They have to paint the opposition as the objectively bad thing. Because what they're trying to do is they're trying to switch people. Trying to switch people over. Like, don't pay attention to what Israel's doing over there. No. Don't, just come away. Don't pay attention. Pay attention to what these people are doing over here. And if you focus them enough, shiny object, you'll get them so hyper-focused on that that's going to be the subject of their ire. And all of a sudden, if they consume enough propaganda, that's when the self-rationalizations start, where it's like, oh, well, you know, maybe Israel's defending themselves, blah, blah, blah. These are all tactics that are tried and true. Anyway. Corey Morgan. The anniversary of a mass terror attack where Hamas members from Gaza went on an orgy of rape and killing of people in a music festival approaches. CTV puts out a piece weeping for how Palestinians will feel on that day. Fuck off, CTV. Again, you're seeing the framing. So, it's no different than any other. It's no different from how we grew up with the war in Iraq and how every politician, no matter how many Arabs they killed, no matter how much land they took, no matter how much horror they committed in the Middle East, they just pointed back to 9/11 and said, remember, look at this. That's why we get to do all this stuff over here, because that happened. And if you're not allowed to disagree with what we're doing now, because if you do, it means you like that happened. This is the soup head that they are trying to create in people. And again, for this, you have to ignore the excuse me. You have to ignore the death toll in Gaza. You have to ignore everything else about this story, because again, they're just going to keep pointing back. They're just going to keep pointing back to the bad thing that happened that manufactures consent for all the bullshit they're trying to do. The propaganda, as I said, has not changed one bit throughout our entire lives. And this is the leader of this circus with his statement. Here's Milhouse, who somehow just keeps getting worse. I don't know how, but I guess for a conservative, it's not fucking difficult. 1 year ago today, genocidal and sadistic terrorists carried out the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust. They burned people alive, tortured children in front of their parents, mutilated dead civilians, and posted these demonic cruelties online for the world to see. All the while, their cowardly bosses and benefactors watched from Tehran and other faraway safe havens. 101 hostage are still being held. Let them go. Meanwhile, Jews in Canada face grotesque anti-Semitism in the streets and by the two-faced and weak leadership of their prime minister placating lawless mobs. And yet, Israel and the Jewish people fight on and live on. Western democratic values depend on destroying Tehran's proxy armies of Hamas and Hezbollah. Canadians conservatives have not and will not waver. We won't bow to the radical, woke, anti-Zionist Jew haters. Hey, Pierre, you're flying a little close to the sun here, buddy. Anti-Zionist. So right off the bat, you're like, oh, no. It's not the. Let me make myself clear. It's not the Jew hate. It's the Zion hate that we're against. The Zionism criticism cannot be allowed. Because never again is now tomorrow and every day after. We unapologetically stand with Israel through fire and water and unite with Jews to say, I'm not even saying that. Fuck Israel and fuck this idiot. And I have to give a shout out to my homie Tyler, who was on the show, and I very much hope to have him back very soon. The Fix Collective. 462 dead Palestinians before October 7th. 10% of them children. You said nothing. 2 weeks before October 7th, Israel bombed Gaza for 3 straight days. Again, nothing. Israel abandons their own to kill Palestinian kids. And you say, Am Yisrael Jai. Fuck you. You are complicit. This is a post from the Times of Israel. We later found out that Hamas had offered on October 9th or 10th to release all the civilian hostages in exchange for the IDF not entering the Strip, but the government rejected the offer. Which is correct. Because, in case it wasn't perfectly fucking clear, this was never about the hostages. Ever. And they say that themselves because they're like, they're still hostages. Yeah, because Israel's not doing anything to get them back. Because they don't care. Why would they get rid of the hostages? They just point back to, but the hostages, as justification for them committing their blood, for them feeding their bloodlust. The hostages are a prop. That's all they ever were. Anyway. Just some quick thoughts, some closing thoughts on the whole on the whole divide up here in Canada with Palestine. You know, much like our brothers to the south of us, you know, I am seeing a very steep divide here. And I'm seeing it across friend groups, families, right across the board. Where you've got people who are still completely toeing the line. You know, they don't even make the connection between shit like, you know, the war in Iraq and other psyops where, you know, they brought people on board with a single event and used it to justify committing mass atrocities. Because they've done this before. You've got a divide of those people, and then you've got a divide of people as well. Across the political spectrum here in Canada. Who are pushing back and saying enough. And we're starting to see it more and more as not just like a far left to left thing, but a across the board thing. I know conservatives who are pushing back against it. I know libertarians who are pushing back against it. Anarchists, of course. But they were one of the first. You know, I know people who, for example, were lifelong CPC supporters. They were always supporting the Conservative Party. They're not voting for him anymore because of this issue. So you've got a really big divide, but I think the one thing that protest showed is that the unrest over this issue is too big to contain any longer. This is no longer a partisan issue. And the reason that all of the talking heads in Canada are screaming about this protest at the top of their fucking lungs, they're just seething and typing into Twitter. This is anti-Semitism. The reason they're doing that is because they're starting to realize that they're losing control. They no longer have control of the narrative. They're no longer able to even in a charitable light defend what's going on over there. And there's too many people for them to drown out any longer. Anyway, my prediction is that support for this is just going to grow. You know, as Canadians, we're kind of limited in our influence, but we absolutely can do more. We should be doing more. Ultimately, it does lie on the West collectively saying, we're not helping you in this anymore. You need to end this right now. But I do find it very enjoyable watching these reactionaries just lose their fucking minds over the people standing up and saying, we're not here for this. Because that's what they're doing. Anyway, we're gonna finish off today with some election news. Because I wanna cover election news. This is a really interesting article. Let's see, how's that look? I asked more than 50 Saskatoon residents what matters to them in this election. Here's what I discovered. What actually matters to Saskatchewan residents in this month's provincial election? If the 50 regular voters we recently talked to are representative, it's healthcare, cost of living, and schools. I'll admit, talking with random strangers isn't easy. When I walk up to a stranger on the street, my gut clenches and I have to force a smile. But it's important, and the insight it gives CBC is valuable. That's why I've spent the last couple of months asking Saskatchewan people what's most important to them, both in an online forum that solicited more than 150 responses from across the province, and in conversations on the street in towns and cities across southern Saskatchewan. I visited 5 communities, going into different places from a powwow ground to a parental rights meeting. Well, some people just shrugged and said they haven't been paying attention or didn't plan to vote in the October 28th election. There were 3 consistent themes that came up wherever I went. I got a glimpse into how people are navigating their day-to-day lives, and how they hope the next government will help tackle the issues of healthcare, education, and cost of living to make their lives better. A stretched healthcare system. Brenda Andrews, 64, wrote to CBC via our online forum saying she hadn't been able to see an ophthalmologist for a complex glaucoma. She'd also struggled with walking, and after a few months of not having the issue properly diagnosed or dealt with, she paid for an MRI scan in the US to get to the root of the issue, she said. We paid all our working lives into the healthcare system. Now it is not there for us, said Andrews, noting her rural hospital in Kamsack has dealt with a loss of services and beds in the past few years. In my opinion, Medicare is dead. We just haven't buried it yet. It's not a problem among just seniors either. I spoke to first-time voter and college student Alistair Watson in Estevan, who said with complex health needs, healthcare was top of mind for him as well. My medical appointments are usually long trips halfway across the province that get fairly expensive for gas and food and hotels. And it's all that for a 20-minute appointment that could have been done over like a video call, he said, noting this means missing school and seeing his grades suffer. It wears on me. Now, I'd just like to know that the Conservatives' plan for this is going to be, therefore we should privatize healthcare. That's always going to be the Conservative move for this. That's because you need to understand that Canadian Conservatives ultimately want Canada to be a clone of America. That's been their plan. That was Harper's plan. That's the plan of the Fords, absolutely. They want Canada as mini America. That's their perfect Canada. Okay? So just a bit of a note there. Shay Millard is currently on maternity leave from her role as a registered nurse in a Regina hospital operating room. But she saw the stresses on the healthcare system from the other side. We're the level 1 trauma center in the city, and it's really hard to get coverage and appropriate staffing. You pick up more on-call shifts than is possible for one person, and it's just a lot of overtime and a lot of long shifts, late nights. The province has recruited several Filipino healthcare workers to come to Saskatchewan. Staff she described as fantastic, but she believes retention will remain an issue unless conditions are safer, less stressed, and less toxic for healthcare staff. People are leaving because they're overworked and it's not conducive with a family life balance. So they're leaving places like the OR where we need their expertise because there's a lot to learn there. 2 Saskatoon ER nurses speak frankly about a healthcare system they say has never been so bad. At Wayburn's Culture Days, registered nurse Asha Shivarajan, hope I pronounced that correctly, has seen Canadian citizens skipping long wait lines and going back to India to get treatment for illnesses like cancer. For her, the top election issue is getting people's qualifications assessed more quickly to alleviate the stress in the healthcare system. I got my RN license just recently in 2024, 10 years after I passed my RN exam from Ontario. But since they had so much trouble with recognizing my RN license from a different province in the same country, it took me 10 years. She hopes to see her friends with nursing backgrounds avoid having to jump through multiple hoops to get their skills assessed. Finding the money to live. This is the number one issue, exactly like the States. Up here, the economy is number one. And if you look at the rhetoric from every single political party, it is so fucking clear that none of our parties are taking this even remotely as seriously as they should. But if you'd like to see more about that, we did a deep dive into that. You can go check out that episode of the Maple Files. We also have a INN exclusive, the Maple Files, basically covering the cost of capitalism in Canada. It's a great breakdown. It's a bit of a black pill. It basically really does highlight how down bad we are. I ran into Kaylee Pierce from Pence while out at the Lumsden Duck Derby in August. When I asked her husband what the top issue was, Pierce was quick to jump in and list off her family's rising power and grocery bills. With trying to feed 5 kids, they're growing, and we want them to be healthy and happy. But if it's going to be the difference between a car payment and feeding my kids, no family should have to go through that, she said. No, absolutely not. No family should have to go through that. We shouldn't. In 2024, we shouldn't be making decisions like, do I cut back on food or make a bill payment this month? Like, I'm sorry. That can't be where we're at in 2024. It is embarrassing. Yep. Saskatoon Mother 5 says cost of living is her top election issue. That's why you see the Conservatives repeating the phrase cost of living so much, repeating how much groceries have cost. They're using these talking points because the point of the Conservatives is always to take policies that benefit the rich and powerful and repackage them as pro-worker, standing up for the little guy sort of policies. And if you look at Pierre's entire platform, which is just like 6 slogans still, that's essentially what it is. It's a bunch of policies that are going to greatly benefit the have-yots and have minimal effect on the have-nots. Just to reverse his little, which admittedly is a good phrase. Back on him. She and her husband both have decent paying jobs, but Pierce said she wasn't sure how others who weren't so fortunate could make ends meet. Yeah, same. Same. My wife and I both do have decent paying jobs, and it's still a struggle. We're still struggling to make ends meet. Everybody I know, every single couple I know, 2 income. So both people are working, and they're still struggling. A lot of people, especially the boomer types, want to go, oh, well, you just need to manage your money better. And it's like, yeah, the amount of people who are just not able to get by, it's not, I always put it this way. If the majority of people are apparently not managing their money well enough, then we need to rejig the system for just what you perceive as not managing money well enough, because it's happening to the majority of people. Okay? These people are so narcissistic when they assume that like everybody else has some kind of problem that they've figured out. And as always, you pull back the veil and it's like some fucking business owner who got like a $50,000 loan from his like rich parents who also put him through university and bought him a car. It's always those people who are like, you just got to manage your money better. It's ridiculous, she said. Right now as parents, we're planning to hopefully be able to afford a big enough house so that our kids can live with us until they're 25 if they need to, and that sucks. That does suck. Especially since people are having to stay with their parents longer and longer because they can't afford rent. They can't afford, like, the basics. I know people who literally moved out, got, like, nothing crazy, like a bachelor or 1 bedroom. And then between rent, bills, groceries, all of it, they were working like a minimum wage job. They eventually were like, I can't do it. I can't afford it. I can't afford rent, feeding myself, and the bills I need. And they had to move back home. Tons of stories of these people. I noticed that Pierce wasn't alone in thinking of the future, particularly when it came to the cost of living and housing. If things are bad now, what might they be like for future generations? Well, given the trajectory of the West, future generations might be saving up bottle caps because we live in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. But yeah. That's why I go back and forth with the kids thing. Because honestly, guys, I will be completely real with y'all. I don't know if I want to. I'm not shitting on anybody who does have kids. God bless you. Raise them as part of the solution. Go for it. But I don't personally know if I can bring kids into this world. I don't. I don't know if it's even a morally right thing to do. Because who knows how bad the world's going to be in another 20 years. Deborah Cookson said she may have a home herself, but she has young grandchildren who are struggling with what she called outrageous rents. By the time you pay that, you pay your food, you pay your gas, and you pay your bills, whatever else. They can't ever save any to put the down payment down, she said as she stopped along her walk at the legislative grounds in Regina. I don't want them to have to suffer the rest of their lives and not be able to get a nice house one day. Just being able to find a rental can be a challenge for many. Regina's Miranda Haynes said that when her old home flooded, she struggled to find a place that didn't have pests, was in a decent neighborhood, and would be affordable. At one point, I was actually looking into that option, sleeping in my car, if worse came to worse, she said. Haynes was able to find a place that cost her $800 a month, but said others are not so lucky, and she can see how easy it would be to slide into homelessness. It being easy to slide into homelessness should not be a problem we're facing in the age that we live in. But it is. The sad reality is, it's so easy, and everybody feels that, right? You know, maybe your work lays some people off and you start getting anxiety because you know that slippery slope of like if you lose a job or you have some kind of emergency, you can't make rent, all of a sudden that snowballs and it can turn into you losing fucking everything and just being out on the street. That's terrifying. And frankly, I don't think it's humane. I don't think that should be a world we ascribe to live in. I think we should do better. I think we have to do better. Education concerns. I was surprised by how many times people listed education as their major election issue, including those who weren't teachers or parents of school-age kids. That was the case for a couple of university students I caught up with during the University of Regina's move-in day. I'm passionate about students and teaching, but I worry about the younger generation, the new teachers that are coming into the profession, said Arlene Lowe, a school principal from Davidson who was helping her child move into the university for the first time. I feel like there's so much pressure on them and they don't have the supports that they need. Estevan Public Youth Center Executive Director Marissa Scarlett said she could see the impacts of COVID-19 and interruptions on learning every day in her job. Some kids she sees struggle to write their own name, she said. Oh, well, would you look at that? Now it's fine to talk about that kind of stuff. The lasting effect that these policies had on kids, which people were sounding the bells on from the beginning. From my job, I see 11 to 17-year-olds who have a hard time reading and writing, and if you can't read or write, you're going to have a hard life. She said noting those missing skills could have a knock-on effect in other areas of a young person's life, from their mental health to finding a job. You see a rally outside here in Regina. The year-long contract dispute between teachers and the government appeared to leave a bitter taste in voters' mouths, particularly for those who are educators or who identified themselves as relatives of educators. Now, the big question, is any one issue enough to sway change? While healthcare, education, and affordability repeatedly came up as crucial topics, most voters didn't seem to have a clear answer on which party was best placed to address these issues. And therein lies the problem. People aren't stupid, guys. Like, this is everyone I talk to. They're like, I don't even know who's gonna fix any of this. Doesn't seem like anybody's like taking this as seriously as we take it. And that just goes to show how out of touch these political parties have become in this country. First Nations voters I spoke to at a Treaty 4 celebration in Fort Qu'Appelle expressed a real sense of disconnect with politicians, who were seen by and large as not honoring treaties and doing little more than paying lip service to things like truth and reconciliation. The government has to take some responsibility for their actions and move forward, says Nadine Goodwill from Standing Buffalo Dakota Nation. She said she hoped to see more action from politicians on sharing land and resources, especially with First Nations people, as promised in those treaties. Governments need to sit down and talk with First Nations people to address key issues like climate change. That's cute. They think our government's going to do anything about climate change. Yeah, not when our entire political apparatus is subservient to corporations, unfortunately. Sadly, our mindset has strayed to more materialistic and greed rather than working together, living as one people, and looking after Mother Earth, he said. Well, that sounds like communist, brother. For all the time and energy politicians have spent arguing against the carbon tax, which, again, mind-blowingly silly. Not one person I spoke to on the streets raised the carbon tax as a top election issue. No one gives a fuck, because they know that leaving it in or taking it out, that's not going to move the needle. That's how down bad Canadians are. That's why nobody's like, yes, get rid of the the carbon tax, or no, we gotta keep it. No, they're like, guys, like, figure this the fuck out. Only a few rated the climate as their top election issue, even after another hot and smoky summer and more temperature records being broken across Saskatchewan. To be fair, I think the biggest problem here is that not a single person I've talked to has any actual faith in our politicians actually handling and addressing climate change. We don't have a great track record, first of all. Second of all, people kind of understand the main forces behind the environment getting wrecked. Our politicians are pretty chummy with those forces. So I think this is a problem of apathy. You know, you only talk about issues you feel like you only talk about issues you feel like political parties can actually handle. And nobody I know has any faith in our governments, in any of these parties, to address something like climate change. They just don't have any faith. It is complete apathy. I don't know if you guys have seen different, but that's just what I'm seeing. After 17 years of unbroken Saskatchewan party electoral success, the big question is whether any other party can make a dent in its support base. More of a Saskatchewan issue. So, yeah, that's where we're at. Old Man Barker. Stupid acts of tax signs beside a sign declaring support for a new hospital somehow. Well, that's the problem. That's the problem. You got one party that essentially that's essentially like, we don't even subscribe to this, to the point where we're going to get rid of like anything that addresses it. Got another party that's like, this carbon tax will surely work, which I'll be the first to admit it doesn't. If you want to fix the environment, if you want to tackle climate change, if this is an important issue to you, the solution isn't to have the working class, the everyman, shoulder the brunt. Nobody can afford any more economic stress. You add anything on top of it, and people are going to fight against you. And this whole, like, we're in this together, bucko, we're doing it for the environment, we're saving the world, that's not going to work anymore. I'm sorry, it isn't. You need better solutions than, oh, we can save the planet by taking more of gas station employees' paychecks. Indirectly, but you kind of get it. You need to hit the areas that matter the most. Fred Edward, the Earth is basically a closed system. The total amount of carbon has been unchanged for millennia. The amount of CO2 in the air is not responsible for the weather extremes. What the fuck up? Interesting. I'm at a point in my life where I'm open to my mind being changed on pretty much everything. One thing I definitely don't trust is I don't trust our leaders to solve the climate problem. That being said, it's possible they're deceiving us about that too, just like they deceive us about everything else. I have noticed it getting hotter year after year, at least where I live. Like I'm experiencing it. I'm seeing the weather extremes. So whatever's going on, we should be working towards a solution. And the big problem is none of our leaders seem to have any ideas other than let's tax the everyman more. You know, go after the military-industrial complex. Go after these big corporations that are literally using the planet as a fucking ashtray. That old lady down the street who works at Home Depot isn't the one that's putting holes in the ozone layer. That's all I really have to say about that. Now, we're going to end with some... I want to talk about the NDP a little bit. For people on the left here in Canada, well, the left, I'm Marxist, so, you know, for me it's obviously, like, different. I don't really subscribe to any party. But the NDP is essentially basically what we're stuck with, let's be real. So this is a video.
Ready? Good to see you.
How you doing?
Man, he has a real
Good stuff. Merci. Let's go. Ready?
This is a man who has broken promises for many, many years. And that's a decent video. But I want to talk about the NDP for a little bit. Because I feel like, and again, as people on the left here in Canada, like it or not, the NDP is kind of what we're stuck with until we get something better. And I hope for something better. And in my lifetime, I think we'll see something better. But the NDP is essentially what lefties and liberals, well, liberals go for the Liberal Party, obviously. It's what progressives are stuck with. And I really think they're kind of blowing it. I think their disastrous alignment with the Liberals has resulted in a catastrophic backlash. And I'm just going to show you the comments of this video. Very clear. Just to put this all in perspective. So I like this video. Nothing in that video is not correct. It's all correct. Based, Gaza and Hamas trending. Very based. Now, look at these comments. Dumbest ad ever, considering NDP votes confidence in Trudeau every time. Prove it to Canadians that you're not corrupt to the core like the Liberals and call the election. Okay, well, this is just a nervous conservative who wants PP to win. But you're the same as Trudeau, so shut the fuck up. NDP is just as guilty as the Liberals for the decline of Canada. The coalition you previously formed with him destroyed Canada. The NDP's walk of never-ending support for Trudeau, absolute hypocrites. Because they support the party of broken promises, and you walked beside him during the worst of it. Your coalition, supported by the NDP. Like, like this is every single comment is linking them back to this disastrous coalition they had. Like, I'm sorry. They're fucking up the bag. And they don't have to. They don't have to fuck up the bag. Like, all of the top issues from Canadians that we looked at least from that sample of people in Sask. You know, talk about healthcare. The NDP openly talks about we need to put more resources into healthcare. Cost of living. They're the only party that at least had some kind of a plan that does make sense. It's not a great plan, but that's the best. It's the best you're going to get, really. They can at least sell it on a policy level, even if they're not going to implement it or shift further to the center like they've been doing, which I've also been very critical of. Education. More resources in education. The main concern Canadians have, they could be focusing on, but the problem is because of this alignment with the Liberals, which, you know, we'll see because it's still likely a year out from an election. But this alignment tainted them in a really bad way and basically linked people. And the Conservatives did this perfectly. They were very strategic. Hate to give a W to the Chuds, but I gotta give a W to the Chuds. Their verbiage, their language of constantly saying NDP Liberal coalition, NDP Liberal government, like essentially completely tying them to one another, has resulted in all these Canadians thinking they are essentially one and the same. And the NDP is missing a massive opportunity here because what they could be doing is they could be distancing themselves. They could have done it long ago. They could still do it to some degree, distancing themselves from the Liberals and saying, hey, you know what? Our faith in this party was a fucking mistake. It was a mistake. This was an absolute mistake. We're going to stand on our own 2 feet. It's the best you're going to get. You sound like a lib. No, I do not. Because at the end of the day, if you were tuning in earlier, I'm the first one to admit I am probably not going to vote. As I've covered in previous episodes. I do not think any of these options are sufficient. I don't think voting is going to get us out of this mess. I think the best future we have in Canada is to get to a point of working class solidarity and self-sufficiency that we can shut down capital. And I feel like that's the only way we'll be able to take any semblance of power back whatsoever. If we were able to vote our way out of this mess, they wouldn't let us do it. They would shoot us at the fucking ballot box. So, I'm just saying, of the major political parties, the NDP is the closest to like something resembling a working class party. But at the end of the day, the people in the NDP, they're going after their own class interests, which are divergent from working class interests. So when I say it's the best you're going to get, I mean, for someone who actually thinks voting is going to get us out of this mess, again, it's not. That's the closest to a party that's not just like, we're just going to serve corporations and fuck the poors. Because that's the Liberals and the Conservatives. They'll just openly be like, corporation's good, fuck you if you're poor, suck it up, buttercup. So, I will point out that we still have some time to go, and if the Liberals continue to eat shit the way they're doing right now, to the extent where they're actually in third and sometimes fourth place in polling. Polling's bullshit. I'll be the first to admit that. But if they continue to eat shit, I'm not even going to say this is an opportunity for the NDP to do this, because I'm not very hopeful in them doing so. But I will pivot a little. If I were in charge of the NDP, okay, if I were at the head of the NDP, what I would do is I would spend the next year creating as much difference from the Liberals as humanly possible. Because there is a very large hunger in this country for progressive working class policies. There is a hunger for social safety nets. There is a hunger for us at least coming close to a system that is less broken and unfair for the majority of people. People want that shit. Okay? As the NDP, I would not be moving to the center. I would be defining my own position and say, look, liberals, conservatives, here's what they're for. They're for businesses. They're not for you and me. They're not for the have-nots. They're for the have-yots. Here's what we're going to do for you. And I'll tell you why this matters. Because we're talking about polling. Again, all we got right now is polling. At least when it comes to the federal election. So we're about a year out. And everybody is losing their minds. Everybody is losing their minds over the massive conservative wave. They're like, oh my God, the CPC is up like 20 points. This is insane. It's gonna be a massive like conservative wave. Right? I would just like to remind people about a year. So this was July 2nd, 2015. Is that big enough? We can make it bigger. About a year away from the 2016 election, the one everybody thought Hillary had in the bag. She was up 19 points, almost 20. In a year's time, well, a little bit over a year, that went all the way down. Sometimes she was losing. She went from almost 20-point lead to only being up 3. And then at the end of that, she lost the fucking election. So I'm just saying, this whole like, oh my God, they have a massive lead a year out from the election, that doesn't mean shit. It doesn't matter. Weirder things have happened, like a game show host getting elected instead of someone who was up 20 points a year before the election. So I'm just saying, if I were the NDP, I would capitalize on this. I would take advantage of this. Because we all know, any Canadian who lived under Harper knows how a conservative government rolls. It's not fucking fun. Okay, it's not good for people. It sucks. And we're still feeling some of the effects of that disastrous Harper government. And like I covered in Reaction Takes Over, there's always a useless neoliberal candidate to emerge as a hero. That was Trudeau. We're still feeling the effects of his uselessness as head, as captain of the ship. So that's just what I do. I'm not trying to feed people too much opium here. You know, Pierre's got a lot of support, and of the three parties, he has crazy amounts of money behind him. Like, the amount of money behind Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives is bonkers compared to the Liberals, and depressing compared to the NDP, really. So, you know, the odds are in his favor. But stranger things have happened. Now, whether or not Canada goes back to the Stone Age of conservatism and the States joins them in going back to the Stone Age of Republican Party, we'll see. But that's just my 2 cents. Anyway, that's all I had for today, guys. Excuse me. Coming on an hour 40. I feel like that went pretty well considering I'm solo. I'm gonna pat myself on the back. I feel like I did really good. As always, go me. What's this? Fuck. Okay. Click the wrong thing. Okay. So anyway, that's today's episode. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Please follow the Maple Files if you haven't. You know, we're slowly growing our YouTube channel, and in the other shit too. Please follow us on Kick and Rumble. I want to start moving more over to the Rumble and Kick side of things. Predominantly because, like, I'm gonna be honest, like, I don't know how much more YouTube censorship I can take. You know, it's just extra stress, especially like YouTube's algorithms are so weird and busted that, like, you can stumble across like an article and read some words in a specific way that's like on an article, so it's obviously not like wrongthink, but the algorithm still picks it up. I mean, that one episode we were talking about bird flu and they put a COVID label, so it's like, it's not just that it's turbo censorious, because it fucking is, but on top of that, it doesn't seem like anybody's thinking about this. It doesn't seem like it's even being logically sorted. So, anyway, thanks again, everybody. I'm Snow Himbo. This is the Maple Files, episode 11. And yeah. Oh, what's this? Oh no, is it? Please don't freeze. Sorry, give me a sec. What the fuck? Oh my god, it's frozen. What the fuck? Okay. Thank you, Restream. Love it. Good stuff. Jesus, crashed my goddamn browser.